This is not your typical review. If you are looking for an unbiased review of the game, this is not the place for you. This video is made to express my thoughts and feelings for Honkai Impact, hoping that it may help people see this game from the perspective of a newer player that got recently into it and had the patience to learn the game and consume almost all the content it has to offer. For me, Honkai is more than just a game. It's a narrative visual novel-like experience that is accompanied by some gameplay. I consider it a massively underrated game that unfortunately will stay that way because it does an incredible job at the gatekeeping itself. From the clustered and confusing menus to the absurd number of shops and currencies that make new players feel like that they should have done a course in primary accounting before playing the game, the number of game modes and mechanics, gacha banners, and a story that doesn't pick itself up until you reach chapter 5 make Honkai a very demanding game that is known for the fact that it has a very low new player retention. It requires your time and effort in order to become more enjoyable. But at the same time, Honkai is a game that also rewards your time. The more you give to the game, the more it gives back to you, and it truly starts to shine in the mid to late phases of the game. But regrettably, this is also the reason why the game will never appeal to a broader, casual audience. Because, in my opinion, you can't play this game casually. And I am not necessarily referring from a gameplay perspective. There are plenty of players that do not care about the endgame content such as the Abyss or Memorial Arena, but they keep playing it because they are heavily invested in the story, characters, or other aspects of the game. Everybody that stuck with Honkai past its early and mid game, it's hardcore about at least one particular aspect of it. Otherwise, like the majority of the people that try Honkai, they would have dropped it. Like any other game, Honkai has its strengths and weaknesses, and in the end, it all depends on what we are searching from a game. Each one of us experiences a game differently, and this video is all about how I experience Honkai and why I love the game so much. Video games are known to be an immersive medium when it comes to storytelling. They are built around the simple concept of making the player feel more immersed by letting them take control of the characters and making them feel like they are part of the game's world. This is their biggest strength and selling point over movies, books, or any other storytelling art form. But, of course, this comes with quite a few drawbacks, since to give players this immersive feeling, the world has to exist in a virtual space and combine story with fun gameplay. Throughout the years, gaming has evolved a lot and gave us some incredible stories and experiences that we will remember and carry on with us. And as time goes on, they will only get better and better. However, throughout their inception and up until now, gacha games had a negative reputation when it comes to their stories, people regarding them as just some shallow and uninteresting tropes thrown together to form this false illusion of a world that just seems to be alive and has characters that are just there to fool you into spending money for something you really don't need. And for the most part, people were right. But there are exceptions. And we've seen it with games like FGO, Art Knights, Grand Blue, and now with Honkai Impact as well. All these games have competent writers that put a lot of effort into making the stories of these games interesting and are not just a means to show you cool characters to milk you out of your money. And I must say that the story and characters in Honkai captured my heart in a way that no other game managed to do so. It is the main reason for which I stuck with the game and enjoy it. I'll be honest, gameplay-wise, even though I enjoy the fast-paced action and the carefully timed runs to get a high score in the Memorial Arena, I would hardly care about them without the characters. I enjoy playing the game because I can play my favorite characters whom I got to emotionally bond and suffer with throughout the story. I hardly consider myself a gamer. In fact, I'm one rare breed that plays games for the immersive aspect of the story and not necessarily for the gameplay alone. Don't get me wrong, the gameplay is important for immersion, but without the story, it would mean nothing to me. And please remember, this is just me. This is how I approach gaming and the things I am most interested in when I play a game. You don't have to agree or be the same. Being a gacha, it's automatically a live service game. As much as I enjoy the complexity and emotional roller coaster of games like The God of War or The Last of Us, they are a finite experience, which means that I cannot fully invest myself into that world because, well, it's finite. You beat the game and it's over. That is why I am a big fan of live service games. I played a lot of MMOs, Final Fantasy XIV being one of my favorite games of all time. But I found them extremely time demanding and I really cannot juggle with them while also working and playing Honkai and Genshin Impact at the same time. I enjoy being part of this living, breathing world that is constantly changing and improves over time. It gives me this authentic feeling as I, myself, change and evolve with the game. And miHoYo has a very good schedule for updates. They do an update every 6 weeks, and unlike an MMO that focuses on fewer, larger content updates, they do smaller updates but more consistently, which, to be honest, I enjoy more. The game focuses on a select few characters from the beginning of the story up until the current chapter. Unlike many other gacha games, where the developers pull out new characters every update and barely developing them in the game's story, giving them the depth of a drunk beaver, Honkai tries to limit their character pool as much as possible to keep every character relevant to the story and making sure that they are all thoroughly explored and developed. Well, the majority of them anyway. To combat the lack of new characters, what they do is that they release the same character in different battlesuits that reflect their direct growth and evolution in the story, which again, I prefer over a plethora of underdeveloped new characters. I get that not many might like this, the fact is that you summon for the same character again in the gacha, but miHoYo makes the battlesuits different enough, from their looks to their gameplay, to justify pulling for the same character again. Just to give you an example, look at Fuhua. We have lightning damage dealer, physical damage dealer, fire elemental support, physical support. Again, some might like it, some might not. I don't have a problem with it, and I think that sacrificing new characters for more depth to the existing one is a good trade. miHoYo is known for the fact that it's not afraid to take risks when it comes to the story and the game in general, even if sometimes that kinda backfires at them. They always try new things to improve the gameplay and are not afraid to put their characters and players through a lot of existential pain and depression, going as far as killing some of them. I mean, the characters, not the players. Not directly anyways. This is not something a lot of gacha games do. I mean, why would you kill a character that could bring you more money in the future? Or potential characters that could do so? And yeah, they make other characters and battlesuits that bring them money, but they could have not done that and milk even more Himeko battlesuits over the years, and even add Anna and Wendy as Hershers to the game. And it's not just the fact that they killed one of their playable characters. The whole story as a whole is not afraid to get deep into some pretty heavy subjects and psychological traumas, such as suicide, identity crisis, depression, and many other heavy subjects. They make these moments so relatable and so powerful that I personally know people that dropped the game because it reopened old traumas and they didn't want to experience those feelings again. Honkai has a very emotionally rich story that is made to be auto-reflexive and focuses primarily on the emotional struggles of the characters. One of the moments that affected me the most was chapter 11 EX, when Kiana was overwhelmed by serious mental pressure combined with the guilt of what she did, even though it was not her fault, out of desperation, and to make sure that what has happened before will not happen again, she tries to take her own life.
あんたの思い通りには
私がいるよキアナ絶望にはまだ早い
But thankfully she is stopped in time by Fuhua. For me, this was one of the most powerful moments I witnessed in any media, not just video games. The atmosphere of the scene, the ominous piano music, the sound emphasis on the trigger, combined with the image of Kiana standing in the center of a white background with the gun pointed at her jaw, are all very well constructed moments that put the emphasis on her mental struggle and suffering. It builds up tension and has you at the back of your seat, afraid because you don't know what will happen. And after that, everything ends with a magnificently placed black screen with Fuhua's voice and theme in the background that brings ease and relief to both the player and Kiana. As someone who has struggled with major depression and suicide in the past, watching that moment made me incapable of doing anything for the rest of the day. And this didn't come from a place of sadness or trauma, but more from a place of auto-reflection that made me appreciate even more that I could have done the same in the past, but I didn't. It's that kind of emotion that is resonating deep in my mind and makes me think about myself and my life, how I live it, and how could I change myself for the better. That's what I look for in a story, and it's not the only time this game has done this for me. Chapter 17, when Mei is forced to make the decision to abandon Kiana because that was the only way she could help her. Chapters 18 and 19, Anna and O's helplessness in the face of fate, showing that tragedy could happen anytime and it's out of your control. Hua's struggle and the deconstruction of the very concept of identity in the HOS arc. And there are more, but these come to my mind right now. All these moments made me reflect on my own person, and they were possible because miHoYo was not afraid to take risks and had confidence in their ability to tell a compelling, and most importantly, a relatable story. And yes everyone, this is a free mobile game. Holy Maybe what appeals to me the most when it comes to Honkai's story is the main narrative thematic, the inner struggles that we humans have against adversity while trying to live our lives. And I also think that maybe because of this more personal approach, people tend to have a hard time getting into the story and understand it. The general expectations when somebody sees the world miHoYo has created tend to give the players the impression of a very active narrative, focused more on the action, that has a fast-paced progression, when in fact that's not how it is at all. Because of that, and the fact that it requires a high amount of investment to understand it, Honkai's story can very easily be misinterpreted and make new players think that it's bad. And that's fine. As I said, miHoYo did an excellent job at gatekeeping every damn aspect of this game. So it's perfectly understandable if you don't want to spend your time reading wiki articles and other external sources such as manga, or watch comprehensive explanatory videos on YouTube and replaying story stages over and over to pick up details you might have missed. Anyway, I digress. For me, Honkai is a game about the struggles of humanity in the face of imminent doom. People fight against an enemy that they cannot even fully understand, let alone defeat. The cyclicity of destruction and rebirth, it's a fate that cannot be escaped, yet these characters try, and each one of them has its own way of coping with the Honkai threat and defy fate. It's the story of how humanity tried to go against the unfairness of life, which is very good at showcasing how both strong and weak we can be. Let's take a short look at Kevin, who is one of my favorite characters. The best way I can describe him is that he is a very complex character that comes in a very simple package with a very simple mindset and approach. Honkai must be destroyed, no matter the cost. He is someone that already witnessed the destruction of his own civilization, and now, after 50,000 years, he is bound by a promise made to the woman he loved to destroy the Honkai and prevent the same fate from happening again in the current era. He is a broken soldier, and the only thing he has left are the memories of a promise he made a long time ago. A promise that makes him continue fighting no matter what. In fact, I don't even think that Kevin wants to fight the Honkai. As he stated in one of Fuhua's flashbacks from chapter 20, everything he does is for Dr. May, and that fighting the Honkai doesn't interest him at all, it never did. All he did was for his own selfish reasons. Here we can already see a man that was broken beyond repair. His body was so heavily modified that he can barely be called human anymore, that holds on to the last lingering fragment of humanity within himself. This is also why he is willing to go to such extremes as enforcing Project Stigma, even if he knows the price that humanity must pay because of that.
必ず人類を崩壊に勝たせると。
On the other hand, we have people like Otto, who only fights the Honkai as a pretense to achieve his own goal, and in fact, he doesn't believe for a second that humanity can beat the Honkai. As he said to Kevin when they formed their alliance, he only wants to reunite with Callan before the Herrscher of the End comes and destroys everything. Everything that Schicksal represents under his command, it's just a cheap farce that only exists because people need hope. And Otto knows that by exploiting the most powerful human desire and emotion, he can get away with any atrocious things he tries to do. This is very well reflected in chapter 15, when Kiana asks Durandal why does she support Otto, knowing all the bad things he does. Durandal responds by saying that despite all of that, Schicksal is still the best bet humanity has against the Honkai, and despite everything Otto did, he also saved the lives of countless people. And yeah, she's right, things are not just black and white, you know, it's just like in real life. And don't even get me started on Kiana, whom I consider a very well written protagonist. Her evolution from this loud, naive and energetic girl to the much calmer and perceptive vigilante is believable and most importantly, a pleasure to watch and experience. Pre-chapter 8 Kiana is a girl that's constantly running away from herself and her past. She even put up a psychological barrier to forget what happened with Siegfried because she couldn't handle the truth, and went on assuming his cheerful personality and values, continuing to live as Kiana Kaslana and wanting to honor the promise she made with her father to fight for everything beautiful in this world. Which I think is just a great line that truly encapsulates what this story is all about. On the other hand, post-chapter 8 Kiana is someone that cannot hide from her past anymore and has to face her demons to continue her journey. She accepts who she is and what she has done and finds her resolve to continue fighting and honor her promise to her father and her teacher that gave up everything so she could have this chance. She realizes that her actions have serious consequences and that she cannot take things in such a light and easygoing manner anymore as she did before. She accepts the fact that she is K423, a clone created by Aro to be a vessel for the Herrscher of the Void, and under Fu Hua's guidance she tries to get stronger and to improve herself to make sure that such tragedies won't happen again. Also, her dealing with the loss of Himeko resonated very strongly with me and made her one of my favorite characters. As someone who went through a similar situation when I lost someone important, her struggles to cope with her loss hit very close to home for me. Anyway, the point is that the whole chapter 11 EX felt like a weird flashback to my past. And not only that, the amount of impactful and emotional moments this game has me relate to, and the fact that the characters feel like real human beings that try their best to deal with their own issues and to come on top of them, or delude themselves even more and give in into their obsessions and dark thoughts, made this game so dear and so special for me. Remember when I said that Honkai rewards you as you put more time into it? Well, here is a good example. The story of Honkai Impact is divided between the game and the manga. There are multiple manga that tell stories of the past, help fill up gaps left open by the game, and go into more details regarding the characters. In my opinion, playing Honkai Impact without reading the manga is like eating ice cream without toppings. It's still very good, but goddamn that strawberry topping makes your taste buds ascend to heaven, high five God, and come back to earth in the span of a second. Don't get me wrong, you'll still have a good time without, and all those heavy and important moments that are pivotal to the plot still hold weight, but not as much as they do if you know all the informations from the comics. A lot of moments and chapters will feel out of nowhere or incomplete. A good example is chapter 11, when a certain character will appear. If you go in without reading Azure Waters, which is the manga that explains Bronia's past, a lot of moments will feel pulled out of nowhere. You'll feel like you should know and care about that character, but you don't, because that's the first time you see her, because you haven't read the manga. But the game treats the story as if you did. And again, we can have a whole debate if that's a good thing or not. On one hand, it's fascinating to see them connect the two mediums, and the overall story flows much better because they do not hold back and try to work with information for multiple places. But at the same time, you could argue that the game should not give you homework if you want to fully understand the story. At the end of the day, it's a personal choice based on your own way of playing the game. But trust me, if you want to understand the whole story, the manga is mandatory, and I strongly recommend it because it's good. Second Eruption is one of the best things I have ever read. I beg you, please read the manga, you won't regret it. It takes Honkai from a pretty good story to an absolute masterpiece of storytelling in modern gaming. The amount of care, time, careful planning and love that miHoYo put in this world is incredible. It's filled with details, references and context clues that will make the story of the game much more meaningful and a better experience that constantly rewards you for paying attention and connecting dots. Like when I first read the Divine Key manga series about Dr. May developing a battlesuit that can fully harness the powers of a Herrscher core, and later realized that the same suit is used in the game story, blew my mind away. From the presentation to the art style and narrative, the manga for Honkai Impact is an incredible work of fiction that I strongly recommend to anyone. Events in Honkai can range from some of the weirdest and most questionable things you have ever seen to some incredibly sad and deep stories that catch you off guard and make you cry like a little baby. Just last patch, we had an open world of Arc City showcasing the story of the latest battlesuit added to the game, Brani, an alternate version of Brania from a Bubble universe. And to be honest, it was extremely fun and surprisingly interesting from what you'd expect from an event. In the majority of gacha games I played, events were just side content that had no depth or meaning and were just there to give players some rewards. But not in Honkai. You could get some silly events like the Stan Wars or the Chibi event from 4.6, but they also come with their own stories. Even if not that deep and complex, they are still fun and built around the characters. Usually, the story from the events and activities is not canon to the main story, but instead they take place in what is known as the Captainverse, which is a multitude of parallel bubble universes that happen to have alternate versions of the characters from the main story, and it's one of the most convoluted and confusing things in this game, but believe it or not, they also went the distance to give a logical reason behind it. In Honkai you have this thing called the Sea of Quanta, which is a dimension that exists between multiple bubble universes and lets you travel between them. The Sea of Quanta is also explored and explained in the main story of the game, and miHoYo used it as a means to pull off some crazy stuff. Now, the Captainverse has its own lore and succession of events with the captain, the player's self-insert, that is hella confusing, and I won't bother explaining how it functions because it would take me ages, and even if I try, I'm still not caught up with everything in it to do it justice. Don't worry, it's not the main focus of the game. If anything, it's more like a side thing that 70% of the player base does not understand completely. If you do, you're crazy, or you played for a long time. What I wanted to highlight when it comes to events and side content in Honkai is their ability to showcase the characters. miHoYo goes the extra mile to make them feel alive and give them more depth in order to make you feel attached to them. And yeah, sure, they do this to psychologically manipulate you to pull for them in the gacha, but never ever has someone gone that extra mile to psychologically manipulate me to pull as miHoYo does in this game. They do so many things in which they put much more effort than they should, to the point that I almost don't even mind the manipulation part. Joking aside, they really do put a lot of effort into the side content. You always feel like there's something happening, even if these are little things that not many care about, but people like me that care for the lore and the characters can really appreciate them. A good example would be the mini 2D animated series that they did for Cilly and Veliona, in which they showcased Veliona taking control over Cilly's body for a day and interacting with other characters and messing things up. It was a silly 15 minutes web event that had tons of personality and life breath into it. From the funny interactions, the contained self-awareness, to the way it played with some of the traits of the characters in a comedic way, it managed to keep my attention and put a smile on my face. When it's the birthday of a character, they do this mini-sized story that is just a couple of minutes long, in which you can see the characters and how they celebrate their anniversary in one form or another. Some are funny sketches, and some even offer more information about their lore, and they always reward you. And again, they didn't have to do them. They could very well send you an in-game mail as they do in Genshin and be done with it. Next, I wish to discuss the pay-to-win aspect of the game. I consider this an important topic in Honkai since people are still debating it even to this day. As any term that came to be in the age of the internet, people have different opinions and interpretations of the degree to which its meaning can apply or not.
Okay.
There are numerous debates on how far a game needs to go in order to become pay to win. Some people think that just by having a cash shop a game is automatically pay to win. Others say that the game needs to have PvP in order to be considered pay to win. If the benefits of spending real money in the game do not directly affect the gaming experience of others, then that's not considered pay to win in their eyes. While others may very well tell you that anything that will help you clear content faster than a free-to-play player is to be considered pay to win. As you can see, the term is still highly debated even today, and almost every person has its own view on what can be considered pay to win and what cannot. So, honestly, it is up to you if you consider Honkai pay to win or not. I already saw this debate too many times, and to be honest, I don't want to take part in it anymore. The game has a bracket system that divides players into multiple tiers based on their level and performance, ensuring that players compete against people of similar level and experience. Even if you can technically clear all the content with almost any Valkyrie, as long as you pay attention to how you build your team, weather effect and boss mechanics, this is the place where whales can get a significant advantage and get a better score. A better score means more rewards for them because of how the leaderboard system works in this game. This type of competitive system is also known as PvEVP. When players compete against each other in order to get a score based on how fast they can clear PvE content. But as a counter to this argument, it is also true that with enough time, skill and resource management, a free-to-play player can catch up and have similar scores with a whale. But it's also true that if you take a whale and a free-to-play player with similar skill level and put the two to compete against each other throughout different weather effects and bosses, the whale will have the higher score in the end. Look, I am not a competitive player, so getting a top score in the Abyss or Memorial Arena means nothing to me. I usually clear them once and I take whatever score I get. If I am in the relegation zone, I rarely bother to take the retention zone. Usually I'm like, at least it will be easier next week. I play Honkai for the story, the intricate universe, compelling characters, and the overall feel of the game. The lack of rewards is also not a problem for me, since I am fortunate enough to afford to put some money into the game if I truly want a character. But that's just me. I know that not everyone is the same, and others may or may not tolerate the advantages that the paying players might get in this game. If you think that Honkai is pay to win and it's not worth it for you, then I completely understand. If you are someone that is not bothered by it and you like to compete against others in this kind of manner, that's also perfectly fine. I gave you my thoughts and some facts. You decide for yourself. It is no secret that Honkai Impact 3 is an old game for a gacha. First launched in 2016 in China, it quickly approaches its 5th anniversary. Also, last year, it has been discovered that miHoYo has filed trademarks for the name Honkai Impact 4 Galaxy. This implies that they reserved the name to use it in the future. But what does this mean? Well, combined with the informations that they gave us regarding the story on Earth lasting for 3 more years, it is highly probable that they are working on a new Honkai game that could be a direct continuation of the story in Honkai Impact 3rd, or a retelling of the story in a different universe with the same characters, much like Honkai was to GGZ. At this moment, Honkai serves as a living monument of miHoYo's journey and passion for making games. From a flawed but promising small game on an oversaturated market to what it is today, one of the best gacha games I have ever played. If Honkai Impact 4 Galaxy will ever release, I hope that it will be a culmination of their experience gained over the years that will manage to capsulate the fast-paced and impressive combat of APHO, Genshin Impact's open world elements, and Honkai Impact 3rd and Gungar Z self-reflexive and character-focused storytelling. I cannot be more excited for the future of this franchise, and I am looking forward to what miHoYo will do in the future with this game. If you enjoyed this video, show your support by giving it a thumbs up and by subscribing to the channel. I plan to make more Honkai content in the future. Thank you all for watching all the way here, take care and see you next time.